All right, everyone. We are here to celebrate 4 years of this story.
Dang, has it really been that long?
It's been that long. And if you think about it, I've been conceptualizing and working on this for long. So I've been working on this for like half a decade. If you think about it,
That's wild.
That's insane.
I forgot we started releasing this one during COVID.
We started releasing this one
like a few weeks before the shutdown.
No, it was like during the shutdown.
During the shutdown.
Yeah, we beginning of April.
That's right.
The shutdown would have happened mid-March.
That's right. So it was right.
Because remember, it was at the beginning of March that there was that weird period of time where like people were like afraid to go outside, but nothing had been shut down yet.
Yeah.
And like that's when I had my birthday, and I got to go to see see Heroes Rising by myself, which is awesome.
I remember that.
Yeah. So lots happened in this last. It's interesting because like a lot has happened, and yet so little time has elapsed in a sense for this story, because a year ago was when we had Kurai's funeral was about to wrap up.
And we had
a figure break onto we had someone break onto campus, and I remember laughing at the comments because there's so many people trying to figure out. I remember the most prevalent theory being like this had to be like Kurai and Mina's daughter from the future or something coming in.
I remember that.
And I was just like I was sitting there like vibrating.
Oh my gosh! And then the
biggest upset
scandal.
The biggest scandal I have caused, I think.
Yeah, there was so much outrage.
Yep, but you know what? I understand the pushback, but I will not take it back.
You're so funny.
I do believe it is. I still genuinely believe that is the direction the story should have gone in.
And somehow we've kept some raiders, even though it was a little wild there for a little bit.
Some people got a little spicy there for a bit.
Oh, a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Man.
Just a little bit.
Anyway,
So we had a new kind of struggle come in for it. Like a lot, like not even necessarily a new kind of struggle. It was almost like so like the struggle of the mind was not anything new for these characters, but it was always, I'm not gonna say pushed to the side or background, or maybe put in the background is a better way to put it.
No, they had the high ground.
They had the high ground, yeah.
They didn't have that much trauma yet.
They didn't have enough trauma yet. Like mental trauma has been a thing for a while, especially for Kurai. Finding out he was the Nomu progenitor, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one. Him finding out that his parents, basically screwed him over.
Mm-hmm.
Even like they were trying to be good parents, but they did the very wrong thing. So like coming to grips with that, like mental struggle was nothing new for Kurai, but this just took it to a whole other level.
Yeah.
And it became more of a focus shift, I want to say. Because like any hero story is about a focus, is usually, sorry, not any hero story, but most hero stories are about
a change in perspective,
or like just even more basic than that, like the hero's struggles.
Yeah.
And although not a new kind of struggle, it was more of a focus on a struggle that he kind of would have thought was behind him by that point. Because like he had that big moment of there was that word that someone used, his apotheosis, when he fought the Nomu. He had like his grand reveal to the world. He was able to say, "This is who I am. This is what I stand for, and you can't hurt me anymore." Essentially.
Yeah.
And like for a lot of people, like that, for a lot of stories like that, you kind of hit that high point, and you peak, and then you kind of just go from there, right? Yeah. Most people don't crash again after a peak that high.
In this kind of story.
In this kind of story. But for me, I was like, okay, if he's going to peak that high, he needs to he needs to crash this hard.
Because that's more like real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that otherwise, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Where's the conflict?
Where's the story?
What keeps you interested? It's the whole Superman conundrum, right? Once he conquers all, what
left?
Can get him down, right?
Himself.
Exactly. And so I think it's been really good. I think there's been some really good talks about mental health and getting help,
and like
among the reviews, and
like I didn't even set out to make this part of the story like, oh, this is about mental health. You need obviously, please take care of your mental health. Like, that is important. But I didn't set out to make this part of the story about that, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think it just kind of naturally lended itself. That was just a part of the character development.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because I think a lot of times the hero doesn't have to deal with that much, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you'll often have the hero having some kind of emotional struggle within themselves, but not often do you see them actually needing to get that kind of help.
Or do you? How often do you see it like affecting the people around them too?
Yeah, it's, you see Naruto's in the hospital again. Life is going as usual,
like,
or whatever.
The Spider-Man movies, like, and I'm gonna like Maguire's, Garfield's, and Holland's movies in particular are very good about covering this, and in like as opposed to like a lot of the other superhero movies that are out there, is that it focuses a lot on what being Spider-Man does to everybody around him. Like a lot, like there's the Iron Man stories. You kind of see what happens to like Pepper and to Happy, but like that's kind of the immediate. Like, that's it. Yeah. He doesn't really have anybody else. Or, like, there's Captain America. His parents are both dead. He's got Bucky, but Bucky was kind of in it with him throughout it. So, like, that doesn't really change his day-to-day, like, when his friend becomes Captain America, so on and so forth. But Spider-Man, and all of Spider-Man's stories, like, part of Spider-Man's story is the pain of watching everybody around you, A, be affected by what you're having to do in the shadows, and B, like, not being able to help them without putting them in more danger.
Even the Miles Morales Spider-Man, really, really does a good
1,000%,
job with that.
Yeah, sorry, I should have included that in there as well.
The whole neighborhood, his family, his friends, everybody. There's a ripple effect with everyone because of his choices and his lifestyle.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to go into like how Kurai had how his life and death affected everybody around him, and what his return would mean for that. Especially when, like, you would think it's like, oh, he's back to life, he's back with us, this is great. Not for him. Like, and because it wasn't great for him, he was just pretty much determined to make it miserable for everybody around him. And then Akurui got a chance to smack him around a little bit and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, which
it's like, yes, I get you're upset. What are you doing?
Which is, it's great to have that voice of reason there too. And that's why one of the reasons I appreciate Akurui, because he's great for comic relief and he's great for epic plot twists and hacks. But
hacks mode on.
Enter Akurui. But it's also nice to have that voice of reason from our resident sassy boy.
Yeah, I always enjoy having him in.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the longer the story goes on, like the more I enjoy like having him interact with, because like he's in this world of heroes, but he himself does not have a desire to be one. Like the closest one I can think to that is like Hatsume, but even she's like actively trying to aid the heroes. Akurui's motivations are a little bit more not self-centered, but a little bit more centralized. Like they revolve around Kurai pretty heavily.
Yeah, because he's all he's got left.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, he's got his cousin and
he's got his cousin, but his cousin and his aunt don't have occupational hazards in their in their job life.
They're pretty self-sufficient, and I think he feels that because of everything his brother has been through, he feels responsible for making sure that he makes it and that he succeeds in everything he does.
Well, something that honestly, we kind of covered this a little bit like during the period where Kurai was dead, but you kind of get to see his thought process on like, maybe if I hadn't perfected his quirk for him, maybe he would have been forced to stay on the sidelines, and then he wouldn't have died. So he had to deal with that guilt. And I think to some degree that still plays a part in what he's doing today.
Yeah. It's almost like a reverse Inside Out Itachi, right? Instead of the older brother feeling like he has to watch out for the little brother from the distance, it's the little brother kind of feeling like he has that obligation to watch out for his older brother.
But again, there's that interesting like dichotomy between them because Akurui remarks on how Kurai is usually able to act with the bigger picture in mind. Akurui himself has never been very good at that.
So is he being kind of narrow-minded in his approach to
Remember,
life right
again,
now?
like it's kind of easy to forget, but he is a child.
Yeah.
Children can be very narrow-minded.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started.
They can be very like, granted, he's got more maturity than a lot of kids do due to circumstances that he's been through, but he's still like, he's just turned 13
and
at this point.
He's yet to figure out what he wants to do for him.
Yeah.
It's now.
Well, literally his whole life was like spent like trying to like advancing his studies, trying to figure out like, how do I cure myself, but first how do I cure Kurai? You know, he cured Kurai and seemingly like pretty much at the cost of most of the rest of his life. So, you know, to him in a sense, like, job done. But now he has the rest of his life ahead of him, so he doesn't have to focus on that one singular, almost impossible goal that's just like not consumed him, but driven him for so long now that now he's trying to figure out like, okay, who am I outside of that?
Yeah.
So like, and I thought about making it making like that a bigger part of the story, but I was like, he's not the kind to have like a dramatic existential crisis.
And he's not going to make it about himself. He's just going to kind of deal.
He's going to bury himself. He's going to do what he's always done. He's going to bury himself in his work and figure things out through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's kind of an Akurui's growth.
It also adds a little mystery to his character too, because you're never really sure what he's going to come up with.
Yeah.
And so it's
if him and Hatsume are working together though, you know.
I'm looking forward to them hearing more of this.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
But I think the highlight in the last year for me was the future arc.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that I enjoyed the most.
Okay.
And I'm excited to kind of move into this coming arc too,
where the timelines really start to diverge.
Yes. Especially this current arc that we're starting now, because I think it's because I had so much fun brainstorming with you while you were writing this arc. So that being said, should we I
mean, there's a couple other things I was gonna cover. No, it's okay. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this mini arc that we're about to get into here. But still on Akurui, one of the other big things is that we now have a villain for him. Yeah.
That's a big one.
I'm sorry. That's a little too big for us to just gloss over. It's like, no. I didn't just give Akurui a villain. I gave him a villain who just danced around him and made him look like an idiot.
Who can do that?
Like I'm loving the commentary section, because like people are trying to figure out, they're like, is this a character from Ruby? Is this a whole new person entirely? I think somebody asked like, it's like, okay, Umbra is like Latin for shadow or something. It's like, is this Shadow? Is this Mataris who's pulling the strings behind here? And I'm like, who knows? Who knows, man?
Those are some.
I'm
cool
like, ooh,
theories.
I like some of these. I'm like, these are really good theories. But yeah, I love that I have been able to the stir that's being created around this character is very similar to one when I introduced Eri before people knew who she was. I'm like, all right, cool, I still got it. I can still get this out of people. But what was I gonna say? I think so. Let me say, you'd think that the person with the biggest character growth would be the main character, right? But like,
Not always.
Like, he definitely had his necessary character growth through this, but I think there were bigger character growths that happened from Akurui, and then from Mina and Izuku. Because Deku was... Because, like... How do I put this? Like, Deku, for so long, wanted to live up to All Might's legacy, and to a degree, he definitely still does. But now he has his best friend's power, and he's trying to live up to the hopes that he placed in him.
Yeah. And
again, it was this stigma of Deku, like, just chasing after this ideal that he wants to hold himself to. And then finally, like, in some of the more recent chapters, he's like, he realizes, like, I need to stop chasing after this. He's like, I need to move beyond this. He's like, I don't need to be as good as they were. I need to be better than they were. And he's finally able to push himself past that. Come into his own. Like, he's really starting to step into being Deku instead of being, All Might's apprentice or Kai's protege or whatever you want to call it. And he's really moving into like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. No, I like, and the show does that as well, just in a different. It had to like just it's just happening in a different capacity in the show.
Yeah, because the relationships are completely different in the OG. So.
Yes. At this point, things are incredibly different, especially in that regard. Mm-hmm. And then, what was I gonna say? Like, how did you feel about Mina's character growth throughout this? Like, there was some serious backsliding that happened, but I think it came out better in the end.
Yeah, I mean, she had a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
But I really like how solid she is, because in the original, she's kind of flighty and goofy and silly, and she can be serious when she needs to be. Mm-hmm. But she's just kind of the life of the party, you know? Yeah. And not to say she's not anymore, mm-hmm. but it's almost like she's become more down to earth. She was brought down to earth
a little bit.
And she's still got her personality, but
still a little spunky.
Yeah, oh yeah, she's spunky. But she's definitely, I think, been forced to mature a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting to watch as well, because I never would have seen her as that kind of character.
Yeah. And it's kind of difficult to maintain the headspace needed to, like, keep her, mm-hmm. like, have her as her character, but also with this mindset.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think it'll be interesting to see her kind of thinking about, and she's been told about her future self. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be interesting to see, okay, how is she going to reflect on that, and whether she, you know, is going to allow herself to be like that, or, you know, and I don't want to give too much away, but mm-hmm. It's sorry, I'm trying to put it into words. It'll be interesting to see more self-reflection coming from her in that regard.
Yeah.
Too. So.
Because everybody else, like, I didn't go too much into it with like how Aerie talked to everybody about like who their future selves were, because that just wouldn't be practical. There's not enough time to keep the story flowing correctly while having that going on as well. But you kind of gather that like everybody else was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's cool how that's cool how I turned out, but like, all right, yeah, I can see myself like that. And she's kind of the one who's like, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to. She's like, I don't want to end up becoming that person. Mm-hmm.
So I personally think of everybody who was told about the future, you know, obviously aside from the people who were dead already in the future, and they, you know, of course they're going to want to prevent that.
Yeah.
But I mean, of everybody who survived in the future, I think she's the one who probably is most affected by it and has to really do a lot of introspection there.
Yeah. But so we got the depressing arc out of the way. I think we kicked it off pretty well with the third movie arc. I had fun with that. Mm-hmm. You know, I wish I could have done a little bit more Rhodey time in that, but they're just like the way that the story was flowing. It's like, you know, this isn't Deku's story.
Yeah.
This is Kurai's story.
And Rhodey just was so well written that it's like, I just want to
I didn't really need to add anything to that.
I just want to see his story progress the way that it did in the OG story,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Don't worry. I'll bring Rhodey back.
Yay.
Rhodey gonna come back.
Yay.
When that's gonna happen, we'll see. But Rhodey coming back. So I think that's it for our little kind of summary of what happened over the last year. So real quick, I'll just say, everybody, thank you so much for sticking with us for 4 years. And here's to beginning year number 5. Let's start off with a we'll call it a very intense rescue arc. Have fun.
I was stuck in limbo, hoping to be dead wrong. No, they took everything from me. Nothing left to see, burning down slowly. Can't bury the truth, but past is far from dead. The chances we lose when we choose never to forget. When choices made, I fought some pain. The taste of blood was the beginning of the end. Beginning of the end.
Family business.
Welcome to the Iida family agency, said Tensei as he greeted his interns with a friendly smile in the lobby of the new office building. Glad to see you're all able to start on the same day. Wasn't sure what would happen with all the craziness going on lately. We're glad to be here, brother. Thank you for your hospitality. Ingenium, sir! Tenya replied as he stood at attention, which led Mina to snicker and an aside while his brother rolled his eyes to heaven. Tenya, we went over this during your interview, the elder Iida sighed. I don't mind if you call me your brother or by name. A lot of people around here use their civilian names when we're not in the field. Right. Sorry, Tenya conceded as he forced himself to relax a little, an act that Mina knew without a doubt had to be physically painful for him. Turning toward a third intern who had come to work for the agency, one who was not associated with UA or the other two students, Tensei then said, Why don't you three introduce yourselves to one another? We can get started with orientation. Each of the three students were damp from the rain that had begun to pelt them on their way from the train station, though they had managed to make it inside before they could be called sopping wet. Once outside, one could hear the distant rumble of thunder that threatened a good long rainfall. Forecast that morning had said the rain would only last a day or two, but more recent reports were stretching out the prediction to a likely 3 days and nights. These students were certainly about to earn their keep, working in a bustling city during a deluge like this one. Tensei mused to himself as he waited to see which of them would make the first move in getting the necessary interactions going. Sure thing, Mina volunteered before turning to the other intern and saying, Nice to meet you. I'm Iida Ashido, but out in the field, I go by Acid Queen. I'm Tenya Iida, her classmate added sharply. My hero name is Ingenium Mark II. I am the representative of Class 1A at UA High School. The other intern nodded in acknowledgement before saying, Nice to meet both of you. My name's Kenji Kiyoshi, codename Blade Runner. I'm a senior at Dramath High. This will be my second time doing a work study with the Iida agency. He looked to be a little older than the two of them, though he was nowhere near Tenya's 6-foot-plus height. His face, low-pitched voice, and posture lent themselves to the thought that he was someone used to letting other people talk instead of being an instigator of conversations himself. He wasn't bad-looking, with a strong jawline and emerald green eyes that complemented the red stripes in his short black hair. We look forward to working with you, Tenya said as he stuck his hand out, which the other boys shook readily enough. I'm sure that we'll all be able to learn a great deal from you in addition to my brother and his sidekicks. Let me know if he's being a handful. Mina grinned as the other boy regarded her classmate with a measure of apprehension. I can make sure he reins in the enthusiasm. As if you could talk, Tenya protested indignantly. Remind me who it was that our class voted most likely to overwhelm their rescues. Bakugo, she answered without missing a beat. No, he was most likely to frighten them. What's the difference? They seem like they'll fit in here, Kiyoshi said to Tensei, who nodded with another chuckle to himself. Thank you for taking me on again, Ingenium. My pleasure, Kenji. Once Tensei had successfully recaptured the attention of the UA students, he took them further inside the building to see where they would be working, training, and even sleeping if they stayed for a weekend shift. There was a respectable-sized workout room, an office lined with 4 dozen computers, more than half of which were currently occupied, large changing rooms, nice-looking shower stalls, and a mess hall. Everywhere they went, there were at least 5 or 6 sidekicks hard at work at their given stations. Tenya greeted several of these heroes by name in passing, each of whom seemed delighted to witness him walking among them as a hero himself. Kiyoshi was also familiar with most of them, which left Mina feeling like the odd one out, though that didn't stop her from making her own first impressions whenever she was introduced to someone new. She was glad that everyone so far seemed as friendly as Tensei, or at least polite enough for her to know that there didn't seem to be any given animosity toward interns. Once they had been given a tour of the building's facilities, Tensei turned back toward them and said, Go on and head back to the mess hall for some dinner. We don't have lunch rush's quality of food, but I think it'll be enough to get you guys ready for patrol tonight. It'll give you 3 a chance to talk a little more. Keep in mind that a fair number of your patrols and training sessions will place you together, so you'll be spending quite a bit of time together in the coming months. Ashido, try to get better acquainted with some of my sidekicks while you're at it. Tenya, I trust you to help her along with that. Of course, the younger Iida replied sharply. Ashido is quite adept at integrating herself into a variety of social circles, but I can certainly continue to facilitate introductions with your sidekicks whom I believe will get along with her easily enough. Will Inertia be in later today? I haven't seen her. No, Tensei said with a slightly crestfallen look. She left to open her own agency almost a year ago. She still coordinated with us when she had the chance while I was out, since we're in adjacent districts, but she's not a part of this agency anymore. A great loss to our family's agency, but good for her, Tenya said with a cheery smile, having apparently missed his brother's brief expression of sadness, though Mina certainly did not. Well, even with her absence, I'm sure that I can introduce Ashido to enough people to get things started. Shroud, K9, and Loop-de-Loop are in right now, Tensei replied, his face quickly clearing up. I'd also suggest introducing her to Cheetah, but she's out on extra patrol. Again? Tenya inquired. Again. Oh dear. Did I miss something? Mina asked the others while her classmate moved his glasses to rub at the bridge of his nose. Who's Cheetah? She's one of Ingenium's top sidekicks, which of course isn't enough for her. Kiyoshi answered this time. She's aiming to be his number 2 before she strikes out on her own. The problem is, she can get a little bit ahead of herself every now and again. Tensei shrugged with another grin. She's got a lot of potential and a great work ethic, but she could do to learn some restraint, and how to take a coffee break every now and again. I'm sure we'll meet her in the field, if nothing else, Tenya told Mina. Something tells me the two of you will get along quite nicely. Sweet. Mina grinned devilishly as she undid her jacket buttons and moved to sling the fabric over her shoulder. Can't wait. Ashido, put your jacket back on this instant! The tall boy quickly demanded with a frown. While wearing them in public, we are expected to don the proper outfit of the proper way. You're disrespecting our school's uniform and our academia by proxy. Dude, we're going to be changing into our hero gear in a minute. We ain't exactly on the streets right now. Then go to a changing room before you take off the jacket. I think you have your work cut out for you, sir. I've known that ever since Tenya decided to be a hero. Tensei sighed heavily, though Kiyoshi could see that he was smiling when he did. How do you think Ingenium and Ashido Queen are getting along? Kai's initial response was to grin at Cronoa from the side before answering, if she hasn't gotten him to go on a rant about rules and regulations at least once with her disregard for proper conduct by the end of the night, I'll eat my saber. The two of them were on evening patrol in the district where Gran Torino had set up his agency while their mentor was working from home with Tsukauchi over the phone. They were keeping to the rooftops for the most part, keeping a sharp lookout for any suspicious activity down below. Cronoa could continue to give Kai tips on how to move without being seen in the city, while he would supply her with some ideas for uses of One for All. She couldn't use any of the secondary quirks stored within the generational power, as it would seem that All for One's doctor had succeeded in removing the extra quirk factors, though the vestiges had managed to remain in the shared consciousness of the quirk. Even so, the fact didn't bother her overmuch. The strength and speed that came with the old power were more than enough for her to handle as it was. She had no idea how Kai was learning the other half-dozen powers so well, even with the help of the previous user's vestiges guiding him. It's a good thing you know her well enough to make that bet safely, because I think you would actually eat that thing if you lost, she told him as they leaped across the street, having spotted nothing in the way of criminal activity on the block. I'd like to say that I always keep my word, but... Kai shrugged as he scratched at the silvery white hair, the most prominent remember of his failure on Nabu Island. Don't you start on that again, Cronoa said with a small frown. You did the best you could, and you know that. Self-loathing for circumstances outside your control is not going to help anyone, especially not you. Right, he said as he shook his head rapidly as if trying to dislodge the maudlin thoughts from between his ears. Sorry, I'm all right. Good, his partner grinned at him. You have any idea what Ashido Queen would have done to me if you came back from patrol all depressed? Honestly, if I did my own depressing, she probably wouldn't do anything to you. He grinned back. Me, on the other hand? I can already hear the lecture she'd use. You see that? Danger sense already clocked him. The pair had almost instantly switched into business mode the second that Cronoa spotted a large van pulling into an adjacent alley, an alley adjacent to a charming little pawn shop. Due to the rise in crime since All Might's retirement, small businesses like that one made for easy targets, since they usually lack the attention from local heroes. Kai's showing in Fukuoka had caused the spike in criminal activities to slow down considerably, but his death had more or less negated the effect. Even with his return to life being made public, crime syndicates and petty thieves had decided to take advantage of the chaos that had spread following Humorize's attempt at global annihilation. How many? Cronoa asked as lightning began to crackle up and down her body. I'm sensing 5 people with malicious intent in there. Kai answered as black electricity stirred up his hero gear. I doubt there's anyone tending to the shop at this hour, probably why these guys picked now to rob it. But I'd like to avoid tearing up the place if at all possible. I can't tell if they're armed or not. Does that matter against us? His partner asked with a cocky grin, which he gave a slight frown to. Top-ranked heroes have been brought down by standard firearms in the past, he cautioned her. Just because we're fast enough to dodge bullets doesn't mean we should assume we're beyond their capabilities and armaments. Plus, there's not a whole lot of room for us to maneuver in that hallway. Right, sorry, she replied, her face becoming more serious in the process. I'll follow your lead. A few seconds later, 5 men dressed in black with ski masks were startled by the sound of something heavy hitting their getaway vehicle, hard enough to crumple the hood and destroy the engine inside. They all whirled around to witness a sight that took a good 4 seconds to comprehend. The Guardian hero himself standing atop the remnants of the vehicle with a cold smile plastered on his face. You know, in the future, if you're going to rob a shop, maybe don't dress like robbers, he said as he made a vague gesture at the lot of them, 3 of them flinching as black lightning sparked across his fingers. Who's robbing? Growled the leader, even as he reached for something behind his back. Oh, my apologies, Kai replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I seem to have created a case of mistaken identity. Clearly you must be the shop's rightful owners with that great big key you're using to get in. As he said this, he pointed behind them, where a large crowbar had been jammed in between the frame and the door. We've been made, said the one closest to the boys, hands slowly going up over his head. We can't beat him. We're better off now. As he dove to the side, the leader whipped out a magnum and fired off 3 shots in rapid succession at Kai. There was a blur of motion and white lightning that interrupted the deadly projectiles and congealed in the form of a girl who now stood a little further up the alley, grabbing the robber's attention with a sharp whistle. I think you boys lost these, she said before she held up her palm so they could see the bullets nestled in her hand, and not a single mark on her or Kai to show for it. What the? Who's that chick? One of the other thieves demanded, of no one in particular. Neither he nor his companions had ever seen her featured on any of the news with Kai, so her presence was a completely unknown factor to them. Even as he spoke, he was startled to realize that his friends were each pinned firmly to the wall by some kind of dark energy that was coming from Kai's body. Your worst nightmare, the young hero answered them with a grin that widened. You think I'm bad news? You'll wish you were dealing with Endeavor by the time she's done with you. There were several more flashes of lightning that erupted from the alleyway before the local police received a call about a disturbance taking place downtown. Hey, Tenya, get a load of this. Iida and Mina both looked up from their dinners to see a hero in his late 20s approaching them with a tablet in his hand and a big grin on his face. Hatake, it's good to see you again, the taller student said as he rose from his seat to turn to the man, obviously familiar with him already. What's this you're so eager to show me? It's Hogasha. The hero grinned wider as he passed the tablet over to his new colleague. Looks like his fans are making a hell of a lot of noise in the forums. Tenya took to the device, his eyes quickly scanning the headline on the presented article from behind his lenses before his eyebrows shot up in surprise. Is this real? He asked with some measure of disbelief. Yup, Hatake chuckled. It's already got over 5 million signatures. It doesn't seem like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. There's even a few articles covering it from some of the major news sites. What's happening to Kurai? Mina asked with a slightly worried frown. This is a petition to the government by the people of Japan to have Kurai skip his remaining 2 years as a high school student so he can begin working as a pro hero immediately. Iida answered as he lowered the tablet and then passed it to Mina over the table so that she could see it herself. According to this, there are even a few heroes who have signed it in a show of support. Wait, for real? She asked as she read the page with wide eyes. I mean, that's a lot of people who want to see it happen, but would that even be legal? Not at all, especially in light of the last year's events and what's happened to Kurai himself, Iida said with an immediate negative shake of his head. Law states that a hero must earn, at the very least, a high school diploma from a hero course before they can begin working as a pro. In the wake of Stain's impact on the community at large, the Hero Safety Commission made it much more difficult to even obtain a provisional license, as our class experienced firsthand. All of that aside, the Safety Commission is under a lot of pressure to send only capable heroes into high-risk areas, so that no one is needlessly killed in action, like Kurai was. Needlessly? Mina repeated as she put the tablet down while her frown deepened into that of a small scowl. Tenya, if Kurai and Izuku hadn't been there to stop 9, how do you think that fight would have gone? Do you think Endeavor or Hawks would have managed to pull off a win against that guy? They could barely handle a few new Nomu working together, forget the knockoff all for one. They'd have died and they wouldn't have been able to secure the win. As much as it killed me to see Kurai die like that, at least he was able to protect everyone and keep the villain from getting what he wanted. I'm not trying to discount any of that, Iida said with another shake of his head. I'm simply trying to explain the line of thinking the Safety Commission is likely employing at this time and their reasons for doing so. Tenya's right, said another hero as he approached with the food tray in hand. He looked to be in his mid-30s and was dressed in what looked like baseball gear, which Mina assumed was his hero costume. No one in the commission is going to risk stirring the waters right now by backing such a controversial demand. Hajime, Tenya said with another smile as he shook hands with the older man. I had heard that you might be transferring to a different agency a few months ago. Well, it was looking a little rough for the place without your brother around, so I was thinking about moving to an agency with a little more pay and less commute, Hajime admitted with a chuckle. But, thanks to his miraculous comeback, I decided to stick around. Wait, you seriously turned down a pay raise and a better location because of Ingenium? Mina asked. Best boss I ever had, the older hero replied before he turned more toward the girl. Hi, by the way, I'm now Hajime, but call me Curveball in the field. Mina Ashido, Acid Queen, she replied as she gave him a short head bow. I guess now I know I got it pretty good in terms of upper management, if you're that willing to stay here under those conditions. Ah, well. Hajime shrugged while maintaining a smile as he sat down with his food. I accepted a few years back that I'm never going to make it with my own agency, so now I try to appreciate how good I actually do have it. Plus, I like to travel quite a bit, and the Iida family agency has enough sidekicks to cover my shifts and let me go whenever I have enough in the piggy bank. In other words, he's a slacker who co-spy on the generosity of a very big-hearted boss, said a woman's voice as the owner and another pair of young heroines approached the group. The one who had spoken, a girl not much older than the students, grinned at the rest of them in a good-natured way before saying, "Saw this poor girl surrounded by a little too much testosterone. Wanted to see if she needed any backup." "You mean you were looking for an excuse to sit at the grown-ups table?" Hatake smiled back at them in a similar manner, which told Mina this was a fairly normal interaction for the lot of them. "I'm more of an adult than you dope." She shot back cheerily before she turned her attention back to Mina. "About it, Acid Queen. Want to come sit with us, or should we duke it out with the boys right here?" Mina looked a question at Iida, who nodded in understanding. "It would be good for you to become better acquainted with some of our seniors without my constant presence," he said, which led to her standing up and looking at him with some measure of surprise. Seeing it, he lifted his chin and stated, "I doubt even your ability to get into trouble in my brother's agency, and as I've been informed by some of our peers, being class rep does not mean that I need to supervise everything our class members do." Mina let out an impressed whistle before standing up and saying, "Remind me to write a thank you letter to Manuel sometime this week." "What does that mean?" "When we first met, you never would have let me out of your sight around your brother's workplace." She grinned as she retrieved her food from the table. "You've loosened up, class rep." With that, she turned toward the other ladies, who smiled in a welcoming manner as they made room for her to walk with them to another table. Iida smiled as he watched her go, knowing that she was in good hands with the women who had approached them. He stiffened in place as he heard a familiar voice saying from behind him, "Now who is that?" "Good to see you too, Moreo." The tall student sighed as he turned around at the grinning face of his family agency's resident heartbreaker. His hero name was Rebound, which, in all honesty, somewhat described his personality. He was one of the younger heroes who had been employed by Tensei, but he was ranked number 7 in the agency. He was very good at his job, so even if he spent a little too much time chasing skirts for the Iida's liking, as long as he kept his professional life above board, he was a welcome asset to the team. "Sorry I didn't see you, Tenya." Moreo now chuckled as he shook hands with the younger hero. "But I mean, can you blame me? That girl you brought in with you is looking fine." "Please tell me she's a senior at UA." "She's a freshman." Hatake deadpanned, already familiar with his colleague's behavior. "She's Kodai's girlfriend," Tenya added almost simultaneously. Moreo's face dropped as he replied, "So stay away is what you're saying, right?" "Only if you'd rather not get on the Guardian Hero's bad side." Hajime grinned more than a little happily. Unbeknownst to the Playboy wannabe, he and Hatake, along with a few of the other heroes in the agency, had bets on how many girls Moreo would fail to attract by the end of the year. In fact, it had become something of an annual tradition over the last 3 years, and while Tensei didn't exactly condone the practice, he hadn't told them off for doing it either. At the thought of angering a kid who had the ability to deal punches on par with nuclear detonations, Moreo quickly decided that the attractive-looking pink girl was about as off-limits as one could be. "Sorry about the sudden introduction back there," said the girl who had come to invite Mina along with her friends, "but we saw a resident hotshot wannabe setting his sights, thought we'd run some interference." "Well, in that case, I'm going to say thanks," Mina replied with a grin as she and the other 3 heroines sat down at a table that lined the wall. "It's kind of funny, but I honestly haven't had too many guys taking a pass at me, even after I started working as an intern hero. I think I'd know how to handle myself if it came down to it, but honestly, I'm glad that it's one of those things I haven't had to deal with yet." "Well, when your boyfriend's the Guardian Hero, it takes a special kind of stupid to try and one-up that," said another one of the women. She was dressed in something similar to what the police officers who train dogs would wear, and she didn't seem much older than Mina herself. "I'm Ichika, by the way. Codename's K9. "Yuna is my name," said the first speaker, "but in the field you can call me Shroud." "And I'm Yue," said the third member of the group, who reminded Mina of a somewhat more confident, grown-up version of Jiro. Loop-de-Loop's the hero name in the game. "We've all heard a lot about you from Tensei," Yuna said cheerily. "Apparently he thinks you got a lot of potential. He also says you're a big part of why Japan's rising star is still in one piece." "I don't know how much of that is true," Mina giggled in response. "Most of the time it feels like it's all I can do to try and keep up with him. But hey, that's the name of the game at our school. Go beyond and all that." "I gotta admire your drive, girl," Yue told her. "The guy can literally dust off a citywide bioweapon attack like it's nothing. You're still chasing after him anyway. I don't know how many people would even consider that a possibility, much less try to pursue it." "How'd you two end up together?" Ichika asked curiously. "Sorry if I'm prying into personal matters, but I really had to wonder." "No, I don't mind telling." The pink girl grinned brightly. "So we actually met during the entrance exam. I thought he was pretty cute, so I..." "How bad is it?" "Bad," said a stressed-looking first responder into his radio as he looked up at the massive pile of mud and rubble before him. "There's at least 20 suburban blocks buried in all this, and I'm not even sure that it's done moving. We're going to need every available hero in the area if we have any hope of finding survivors." There was a muffled curse on the other end of the radio before the dispatch officer replied, "We're putting out the call right now. Get started on evacuation efforts with anything and anyone you have on hand. We'll try and get a roster of the people who live in that area, so at least we have an idea of how many people we're looking for and all of that. Understood. Make sure to send as many medical personnel as possible, said the first responder before he felt a rumble run through the ground, causing more blood to drain from his face as the rain continued to beat down on his already soaked body. Hurry, please. I get the feeling this disaster's nowhere close to finished. All right, interns. A young man with silvery blue hair and sapphire eyes said as he looked the three students up and down with a severe expression. You've had your time to become acquainted with the facility and some of the other sidekicks, so now it's time to get to work. When you're not working with Ingenium, you will report to me while you are a part of this agency. The speaker's name was Shirogane, and according to Tenya, he was the agency's number 2 hero. It was him who had taken over in Tensei's absence, but with Ingenium's return, he had chosen to return to his original position as the man's right hand. It was another mark of how well liked the elder Iida brother was by his subordinates, but Mina noticed that her classmate didn't seem to speak to him with the same sort of friendly air that he did when he was introducing her to the other sidekicks in the agency. Given his somewhat aloof carriage, she could see how he might rub some people the wrong way, but if he was Tensei's most trusted sidekick, she figured it might be better to hold off on personal judgments for the time being. You may call me Tempest or Sir in the field, Shirogane was now saying as he made sure to take turns in maintaining eye contact with each of the interns, who met his gaze evenly enough. We'll be starting with standard patrols of the area, which will last until midnight or the next team is called in to relieve us. I expect each of you to be ready to go in 15 minutes. Make sure to brief the rest of the squad on your quirks, memorize each of theirs before we head out. In a large agency like this one, unit cohesion is a prerequisite for success. I won't have you interrupting the team's natural rhythm by allowing for sloppy preparations. Okay, so maybe I was too quick to think that there's no prejudice against interns here. Mina thought with a small frown as the man left without another word. How's a guy like him rank so high at the 80s agency? Are his skills really good enough to offset such a bad attitude? Don't take it personally, Tenya said while Shirogane walked away, as if he had heard her thoughts. He's not normally like that, countered Kiyoshi. He's not as relaxed as Ingenium, granted, but I don't think I've ever seen him be that strict with any of the other sidekicks. He definitely wasn't like that with me the first time I came here. I mean to say that his issue is not with Ashido. Tenya replied with a small shake of his head. The truth is, I do not think that he approves of me, which has unfortunately led to the drawing of his ire between the two of you. If that is the case, I hope that you will accept my apologies. So saying, he bowed deeply to the two of them, which got Kiyoshi to raise an eyebrow while Mina let out a long sigh. I seriously doubt it's your fault, she told him as he straightened up. If he does have it out for you, though, do you know why that would be? The Iida family agency is one of the oldest ones in the country, Tenya responded with a small sagging of his shoulders. The primary reason for that is in the name. My great-grandfather and his sons were among the first official heroes, and when it came time for my grandfather to retire, he passed on the agency to my father, aunts, and uncle. Now Tensei is the head of the agency, and when I become a pro hero, I will be expected to take up the role of leadership alongside him. I know that Shirogane holds a great deal of respect for my brother, but I do not think that he approves of the nepotism involved in the agency's workings. Wait, so he's basically pissed off that as soon as you graduate, you're pretty much going to be taking his position in the agency? Mina summarized. No, I will actually be his superior. Tenya shrugged a little helplessly. As a pro hero who helps to head the agency, I will have a say in who is hired, dismissed, or taken on as an intern, a privilege not afforded to a sidekick, even one as trusted as he is. Had Tensei not recovered from Stain's attack, he would still be in charge of this place, and I sincerely doubt that I would have been welcomed as I have been by my brother. But wouldn't your dad or somebody been able to tell him whether or not you could be a part of this agency? Mina asked, trying to keep the politics straight in her head. I mean, your family name is on the sign out front. My father could have some say, I imagine, but he's retired, so any final decisions are up to the hero who is currently in charge of the agency, the tall student answered. While Tempest was in charge of things, I did not receive an invitation to come and do an internship or work study here. That's messed up. Mina scowled while she crossed her arms. Well, I doubt I would have taken the invitation at the time, even if I was given the chance. Iida shrugged as he spoke in a placating tone. Unfortunate as it is, my intentions were not strictly in alignment with heroism at the time. Fair enough, Mina conceded, though Kiyoshi looked a little confused in the exchange. Not in alignment with heroism, he repeated, causing Iida to stiffen in place. What does that mean? He was having a rough time with his brother being injured, so if internships hadn't been a mandatory part of our course, Iida probably would have taken time to be with his family, Mina said before the bespectacled hero could fumble through an answer. I know that after Kudai died, I was nowhere near a good headspace for being a hero. Kiyoshi regarded them with something like a dubious gaze, but after a moment he simply shrugged and said, I suppose you should both be grateful for the miracles your loved ones have experienced then. Not that it's really any of my business. Seeing that the other students seemed willing to move on from the subject, Iida let out a small sigh of relief before saying, "We should get ready for Tenya!" The sound of Tensei's urgent shout took the interns by surprise, even as they noticed the man himself jogging toward them in full armor with a worried look on his face. "Good, you're all here," he added as he came to a stop in front of them. "Get into your hero gear double time. There's been a massive mudslide at the edge of the suburbs, and the first responders are already pulling bodies from the rubble. Every available hero is being summoned to assist the evacuation and rescue efforts." "We're on it," Tenya replied as both he and Mina turned around and took off for the locker rooms, where they could see a number of the other sidekicks also heading. Staying behind for a moment, Kiyoshi turned to his boss and asked, "How many of us are going, sir?" "Not enough," Tensei sighed in frustration. "I've sent out some calls for our off-duty members, but they'll take a while to get there, and most of the people in the agency can't be pulled off patrol without risking an incident in the area escaping our notice. Then I'm sure me and these two will do our best to make up the difference." The younger hero mused before he ran in the same direction that they had gone. "And here's to a job well done." Kurai grinned as he held out a candied apple that he had just bought from a nearby convenience store to Eri, who rolled her eyes upward. "I'm not a little girl, Kai," she chuckled as they watched their arrests being hauled away by the police, some of whom had spent a few minutes talking with Kurai with no small measure of excitement. "I don't need snacks as a motivation to keep doing my job." "So you're saying you don't want it," he replied as he started to pull the treat away, only to have a blur of wind snatch it out of his hand before it reappeared in Eri's grip. "Don't put words in my mouth," she told him before taking a bite of the snack. "Thought so," he laughed. "By the way, when you're going in to dislocate somebody's elbow, remember it's a lot easier to do if you apply pressure in opposing directions for each half of the arm, instead of just trying to strike at the joint directly." "Does it really matter that much against someone like those jokers?" she asked him skeptically once she had swallowed the first morsel. "Not really," he admitted, "but against someone with a reinforcement type quirk, you're going to want to know how to utilize weak points like that with the most efficiency possible, especially if you're going up against multiple opponents. We may be able to outmuscle just about anyone, but it's better to outmaneuver them when we can. Using small fries like them for practice turns that fighting style into an automatic reflex. Muscle memory for when you go up against a heavy hitter like Muscular or Deku." "Or you?" She smirked, which led to him grinning back at her with confidence. "Dream on, kid," he replied. Eri was about to return the snarky comment with one of her own when Kurai's scouter alerted him to an incoming call, which led to him holding up a hand for silence. "Yes, sir," he said after he accepted the call. There was a brief pause before his eyes widened slightly and he asked, "How long ago was—" "Uh-huh. I understand. We'll head over ASAP." Dropping his hand from the scouter, he turned to his partner and said, "We gotta get moving." Eri's gauntlets immediately extended to wrap themselves around her arms and hands while she asked, "What happened?" "Mudslide in the Madrias Ward, a bad one," he replied as the air between them began to charge with the power of one for all. "Gran Torino got the call for her help because the Safety Commission knows that we can be there in 2 minutes. We can be there in a few minutes." An instant later, the two of them were leaping from rooftop to rooftop, the wind whistling in their ears, and lightning tickling their skin as the city passed beneath them in a blur. Struck by a thought, Eri looked over to Kurai and shouted, "Go on ahead of me!" "What? You can fly faster than we can jump," she told him. "If it's as bad as it sounds, there are people who need all the help they can get right now. I'll be right behind you, but a few minutes of your assistance can make all the difference, even without me." "You sure?" "Yes," she insisted. "Go!" With one nod back in her direction, Kurai then engaged float and powered up to 80% so that he could blast off toward a storm in the distance at the speed of sound, leaving a loud thunderclap and a grimly smiling area in his wake. "Okay, people," Ingenium shouted to be heard above the din of noise created by all the first responders, machinery, heroes, civilians, and storm that continued to rumble ominously above them. Gesturing to a map that had been put behind him underneath one of the tents that served as a coordination point for the rescuers, he went on to say, Our job is search and rescue in these 2 areas. We will be splitting into 2 teams to accomplish this, one of which will be led by me. The other will be led by Ingenium Mark II. Rosters are up here on the board, so find your group and be ready to move out once this briefing is concluded. Please bear in mind that we could be at this for several days, so be sure to pace yourselves." "Hang on, did I just hear that right?" Mina Ashid Queen asked as she looked up at her classmate, who was stiff as a statue inside his armor. "He wants you to lead one of the groups?" She wasn't the only one looking surprised, and in Tempest's case, bordering on angry. "I'm sure some of you hold reservations about Mark II leading one of the teams," Ingenium went on to say. "I'll only explain this decision by telling you that he has been in charge of a much larger rescue op with far less resources, and under his leadership, there were no casualties among the civilians in his care on Nabu Island. Listen to what he tells you to do in the field. No questions asked." "Yes, sir!" the assembled sidekicks answered in unison. "Let's get to work then, heroes. Team A, you're with me in the East Quadrant." When Ingenium Mark II still seemed to be frozen with surprise, Mina elbowed him hard enough that it forced him to move while also jump-starting his brain. Right, he managed not to stammer. Team B, I'll be headed to the northwest quadrant shown on this map. Please join me as soon as you're ready. We must get started immediately. As he ran out into the rain, the other sidekicks quickly scrambled to figure out which team they had been assigned to before heading out themselves. While this was happening, Ingenium found himself being pulled aside by Tempest, who had a severe frown on his face. People's lives are on the line, he said to his boss, keeping his voice low enough so that the others would not pick up on it. You're really going to leave them in the hands of a half-trained child? As I said before, he's handled much worse, Ingenium replied firmly. Look, I get that he's your brother, but he was forced into those circumstances on Naboo. Tempest continued to argue doggedly. There are other heroes in this agency more qualified to lead Team B. You can't endanger people to try and just prove a point to your brother. Scab is going to assist him, and since when has any hero not been forced to act based on their surrounding circumstances? Ingenium replied, his voice becoming a little harder as he did. The faster the Tenya becomes acclimated to the position of command in a situation like this one, the better it will be for him and those he will go on to save in the future. Now stow the protest, Shirogane. That's an order. As you said, there are people depending on us. Yes, sir. When the heroes of the Iida Agency's Team B had assembled, Ingenium Mark II quickly took stock of the heroes and quirks available for him to utilize. He had Acid Queen, a middle-aged hero called Scab with a coagulating quirk, Rebound, Cheetah, whose name explained her quirk, Loop-de-Loop, a tall hero codenamed Stuntman, and Shroud. 8 heroes to cover a square kilometer of buried suburbia, he thought with a grimace inside of his help. Okay, let's think this through. Don't rush in without a plan. How would Brother handle this? The clouds above him rumbled angrily, and as if in response, the other heroes felt another tremor run through the ground, causing several of them to look up at the mountain with alarm, though it didn't seem to be moving again. Yet. This didn't stop Mina from asking, What's the plan, Tenya? Don't rush, he told himself as sweat lined his brow. Rushing in will only get us all killed. Images of Kurtai's broken, lifeless body filled his mind, causing his throat to dry out and his tongue to lock in place. Don't be careless no matter how dire things look. Don't make things worse with haste.
Set the stage and let the rage consume you. And like a wildfire burning through you. Building a cover from confetti and confessions. Maybe there will be a lesson in the rubble when it's through. Buried in metal and a million memories. The temperature is rising to 1,000 degrees. I never ever learned to let go of the pain. I'll make it all burn till nothing remains.
All right, kicking off year 5, and I feel like there's gonna be somebody who's a little perturbed, at least, that we're not getting more of the new villain, especially after such a grand reveal in the last chapter. But I feel like with a villain, yeah, it's not their style. Like with a villain like that, you need to like they only play their card. They only.
They play their cards when they need to.
They only show their hand when they need to. So we're not going to see that. We're not going to see them take an active role again here for a minute.
That being said, we have a lot of
other
character
stuff
development happening here coming up.
Yep. So so when I was planning for Ingenium to return, right? I was like, okay, of course Iida's gonna. I was like, of course, Tenya's going to go and intern at his brother's agency as soon as he can, right? Mm-hmm. And, with the way that things played out in this version of the humorized events, it made sense that there would be some staff rearrangements happening and all that. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is a good chance for Tenya to be able to join up at his brother's agency. And I, like we covered last time, I toyed with the idea of having Kurtai be a part of that as well. Because, this would have been a dream of theirs since they were kids. But, things are different now. They're not little kids anymore. They have
and of course Kurtai knows he'd be welcome there anytime, and I think he's more of the mindset. We already know he's of the mindset that he wants to forge his own path. I mean, even from the entrance exam where he even though he could have just gotten in, he took it anyway.
He chose the hard way.
And so we already know from his personality, he's gonna always go somewhere else so he can learn to be sharpened somewhere else.
Yes.
That being said, Iida probably wants a firm foundation because he knows he's going to be working with his family's agency, and so he wants to develop those relationships and figure out how to work with the people that he's most likely going to be spending most of his career with.
Yep. And then enter Mina. And I actually planned this out from the time that I had her go to Otheon with all of them, because I was like, yeah, she can legally get away with it. That doesn't mean your boss is gonna be happy about it, kind of thing. So I was like, all right. So again, Iida moving into his brother's agency, I'm like, okay, this provides me with an opportunity to kind of, how do I say, like, not mend the bridge, but like give Iida and Mina a little bit more time to kind of interact with one another. And normally there's two characters who's like, yeah, they're in the same class, yeah, they get along, but there doesn't need to be anything more than that.
Yeah.
But enter Kurai, he's very important to the both of them. So as a result, they're both going to be in his orbit. They're going to be in each other's orbit more consistently in life.
And they have such different personalities that it's really going to be really interesting to see them interacting more.
Yeah. So I needed to find a way to okay, I need to present them with some opportunities to find common ground. Can they find common ground in this situation? That has yet to be seen. But I think for her part, Mina's definitely trying already. Like, you got that bit where after Tempest grilled them, and Iida kind of slips up about how he wasn't in a very good headspace after Stain messed up his brother, and he realizes he kind of stuck his foot in his mouth with the other intern asking questions, and Mina's just she gets in there
and she can just cover him.
She covers so quick.
Ultimate wing girl, man.
Yep.
I love her.
Yep. That was fun.
And Tempest is no dummy. But
no, he's not.
At the same time, he can respect that it's.
Well, so Tempest wasn't the one who picked up on the fact that Iida was messed. It was that other intern, Blade Runner.
Oh, Blade Runner. That's right.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a thought and then it died. We're getting. I am interested to see in the original material if Iida is just gonna take over the Iida family agency after they all go pro and stuff, or if he's gonna do his own thing with Manuel to start with, or. Actually, I can't remember if Manuel's dead or not at this point. Because I can't remember if he got killed during the fight with Shigaraki. Or if he got killed later. I don't know.
I don't even remember who that is.
Manuel's the water hero that he was interning with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and in this... So just a quick recap. In this version, Iida and him didn't part on, bad terms or anything like that, but because of the way the heroes are having to be rearranged after the whole Kanto thing with Humorize, Manuel wasn't able to take him with him, which is how Iida ended up going to work for his brother.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. I remember we sat workshopping, all of these...
Oh my gosh.
All these sidekicks.
How many sidekicks?
65 sidekicks.
All right. So, yeah, this was so fun because what we did was we just sat down and we were out of town. We weren't in our normal area and we just were people watching.
And there was a festival or something going on.
Yeah, there was this crazy festival going on in the middle of nowhere in
the
mountains.
You just people watching Prime is what this is.
It was perfect. There were so many weirdos and just I don't know. So we were just people watching and coming up with quirks for different people and giving them personalities. And it was really fun.
Yeah. So real quick, I'm gonna run through the list of, because I have the information written here. We covered a dozen new people in terms of Ingenium sidekicks, and we didn't even get to all of them. Let's see. So we ran into Tempest. So he's ranked number 2 at the Iida family agency. His quirk is pressure. He can affect barometric pressure in his area. Let's see. So I have notes for personality and all that. He definitely has a borderline antagonistic relationship with Tenya. Tenya pretty much hit the nail on the head where he's like, one of the reasons my family agency is so well known and successful is kind of one of its downfalls is the nepotism. And it's I understand why people don't like it. He's like, for my part, I want to be a good hero, but you run the same risk with this as you do with bad kings and queens, or a good king having a bad son.
Any family business,
yeah.
And so,
I'm me personally, I'm hero businesses should not be a family business.
I like that he is able to see Tempest's side.
Yeah.
And I think that one struck a chord in me because...
How's that?
I'm not similar to Iida in many ways, but I can empathize in his people-pleasing tendencies. And I know how hard it has to be for him to see someone who he respects and understand why they don't like him or feel in a negative way toward his being there. Yeah. And I can understand that would be really hard for him, but he's, and he's accepted that it's just like, I'm just going to have to earn this guy's respect.
Or just grin and bear it at the very least.
And so for me, I just kind of cringed a little bit because that one's hard for me personally. And so I feel for Iida in this situation.
Let's see. This person's mentioned, but we'll see. Like, this person's kind of mentioned in being in the B team at the end of the chapter. The hero name is Scab.
I love her.
Yeah, her quirk is coagulation. So basically, like, if you're like, doesn't matter like how bad you're bleeding, whatever, she can force your blood to scab over.
Which is a phenomenal rescue hero trait.
Yeah, so it's like it's not going to heal.
Also terrifying if you're fighting her.
Oh yeah, because she could cause like an embolism or give you a heart attack.
Ah!
Yeah. Fortunately, well, see, that's the thing. It's not bloodbending specific. Like, she has to
coagulation.
Yeah, it's coagulation. So like, it's interesting too because like it's a stop effect on a wound, but it doesn't cure the wound. It doesn't heal the wound. Mm-hmm. Like, it just kind of like it speeds up your body's defense mechanisms more or less, but it doesn't like actually repair the damage.
Yeah. You can just keep the blood inside.
So she can help keep people alive long enough to get them to the people who are like, okay, we can get them to the hospital and like and fix what's wrong on the inside. But yeah, like that was one of the things we were having a hard time. It was like, okay, we're used to seeing like all these crazy flashy quirks, like even among some of the people who would be considered sidekicks. It's like we need to have quirks that are, for lack of a better term, somewhat more mundane but are still very useful in this line of work. Yeah. So like if Scab chose to be a combat hero, definitely could like be giving people heart attacks and strokes and stuff.
Which is a little extreme.
It's a little extreme. It's a little extreme.
A hero.
Yeah, that's part of the problem is that like she wouldn't make a very good combat hero. She'd make a great villain. Mm-hmm. But she does make for a very good rescue hero. Yes. Let's see, what else have we got? We've got Rebound, ranked number 7. His quirk is Ricochet. And the way that this works is once he has so like there's that character from Ketsubutsu where once he locks onto a target, he can throw something at it, and no matter what it has to go through, it'll hit it. His works a little differently in that he has a target that he focuses on. He can throw an object, and the object will align itself to ricochet off of any number of obstacles, getting faster and faster until it hits the target. So like if he wants to hit something not as hard, he'll kind of throw it like to ricochet 2 or 3 times. But if he wants to hit something really hard, he'll throw it like behind himself so that it bounces around a bunch of other things before it hits the intended target.
It almost reminds me, it's different, but it's almost like if you were to take, and I haven't seen the new Black Panther, so maybe they even did something like this, but if you were to take the Black Panther suit and almost like weaponize it instead of like absorb, it's almost the reverse. Like instead of absorbing the impact, it compounds. Like in a different way. I don't know.
It does. The Black Panther suit does do that.
Yeah.
Like it absorbs it and then like once
it releases.
But it releases it. Yeah.
Yeah. The difference is it's perpetual. It's being released.
Oh,
with the motion.
Oh, instead of just being added continuously to.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, I see what you're saying. Let's see. For personality, I wrote down a successful flirt. He's let's see. He's 23 years old. He gets around a bit. Honestly, I don't like him as a character, but. I can't write every character that I write and create can't be somebody that I like. And the same goes for heroes and villains. Like I can definitely write a villain that I really like, and I can write a hero that I really don't like.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that like throughout, like that's part of what this story has been for me is forcing me to step outside of those comfort zones, because like I've definitely expanded my roster in terms of personalities and like character dynamics I want to say.
I think when you were having everyone kind of go through the agency and get introduced to everyone, it definitely reminded me of my main college job when I was working, because I attended the college that's actually got the oldest age demographic in the country. And there's plenty of college aged kids, but I had a vast range of age groups that I went to school with and worked with when I was working, during the time I was working as a lifeguard. And it was so funny because it reminded me of that kind of vibe where you're getting to know all the different personalities, and you've got like, you know, the super like,
it's a work meet and greet.
Yeah, it was, and that was the vibe it gave me.
Yeah.
And I, you know, and there's always that one dumb flirt who's so full of himself and kind of
everybody else
rightly
is
so,
kinda,
which kind of frustrates.
But everybody else is kind of like onto the act at this point, so it's like, okay.
Yeah,
I did enjoy the bit where everybody around him is just like, no, here's why, and he's like, it's like okay, so he's like, he's a flirt, he's kind of a prick, but he's not stupid. Because like a stupid person would have been like, nah, I can make her like me better than whoever else.
Yeah.
He's just like, all right, cool. He's like there's both legal and pain reasons why I would not want to do this. Okay, I'm gonna move on now. But yeah, let's see. So another one's mentioned but not seen yet is Cheetah. She's 24 years old. Her personality is listed under as overachiever, very eager to prove her worth. Let's see. Like, this probably won't be covered in any capacity in the writing, but it kind of infuriates her that Rebound is both younger and to her more lackadaisical than she is, and he's ranked higher in the agency.
Sorry, I missed that because I stepped on the pug.
Oh, poor pug.
Poor thing.
No,
I got worried.
It's like something that like just doesn't have an opportunity to like come up like in writing is going to be that like she kind of has like a little bit of beef with Rebound because he's younger than her. He's a little bit more lackadaisical about stuff than she is, but he's ranked higher than she is. Yeah, he's number 7, she's number 9 in the agency. And like she's just like having the hardest time getting her head around the fact that like, okay, learning when to take a step back is also an important part of the process. And she just like is not clicking on that, so that's what's keeping her from advancing right now. Excuse me. Let's see, we got Loop de Loop. Her quirk is Echo Replication. Do you remember what that one does?
I can't remember.
So she can. How many notes are there on key music?
What do you mean?
Like when you're composing music, like how many notes are there?
Well, there's.
No wait, sorry. Like do re mi fa. So
yeah, there's 8.
There's 8. Okay, all right, yeah. So she can make up to 8. She can make
7. Sorry.
So okay, so she can make up to 7 clones of herself. And she creates them by singing a different note.
Oh, okay.
So like she has to hold a musical note for, I'm gonna say like 3 seconds, and then the clone spawns in. So
just 7. So what if it's in a different octave?
The octave doesn't matter.
Okay.
Like we're not trying to do like a twice thing here where she can just like spawn legions. And her clones can't make clones either. It just comes off of her.
Okay.
Like I kind of wanted to do like a twice thing, but like a little bit more
tame.
A little bit more tame, yeah. And that just seemed kind of like a cool way to do it.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, her personality is listed as Cool Cat. I remember describing her as like a more grown-up version of Jiro.
That's right.
Yeah.
Punk rock princess.
Love it. Yeah, yep. Like her and Sabine would be chilling.
Ooh, I want to design this character.
Go for it. Let's see who else we got. Stuntman is another one's listed. We'll get more into him next time. We had Shroud as another one of the girls. She's ranked number 36. Her quirk is Aerial Silks. Let's see. So she's kind of got a flighty personality. So like in terms of girl talk and stuff, like she and Mina will get along very well.
Like she reminds me of 1010 from
a little bit
from Avatar: Last Airbender.
You mean Ty Lee?
Ty Lee.
1010's from Naruto.
I'm sorry. I'm so dumb. Well, it still fits.
I mean, I don't think 1010's that flighty.
1010's not flighty enough. Yeah, I mean Ty Lee.
Like a little bit she can be, but like Ty Lee, like that's her default.
Why do I just lump them together?
I don't know.
There's something wrong with me.
I mean, you married me for starters, so there's
no.
There's let's see, we had Curveball. He's ranked number 37. Likes to travel, 35-year-old guy. Oh, that's right. Shroud is the youngest pro hero who's at the agency.
That's
she's 19.
Right.
Yeah, she's 19 years old. So like that I remember that being like that's one of the reasons why she and Mina get along so well, because like they literally have like less than 3 years separating them.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So like Shroud is kind of still in that interesting phase of like she would have been like I think I had it that she like came from no, she didn't come from Shiketsu. Loop de Loop came from Shiketsu. Shroud, she came from another hero program, like not super important, but she's still kind of like in that younger where like she still has very fresh memories of being like, oh yeah, like last year this time I was taking exams and stuff, and I was hanging out with my friends after school and all that. And now she's working.
She's not at our age where high school is just this distant, vague, foggy memory that we kind of remember.
Yeah, something like that. So let's see. Yeah, and then we've got. I was on to Curveball. So his quirk is Trebuchet.
That's right.
Yeah. That's that. Like I hope I get to. So because he's on the A team, I'm not really gonna have a whole lot of opportunity to cover what he does. But his quirk's gonna be kind of cool. Like I hope I can find an opportunity later on in the story to kind of showcase what him and some of these other sidekicks can do.
Yeah, and we definitely came up with him before we watched Black Clover. So.
What?
I can't remember the name of the character who has the baseball.
Magna?
Magna.
Yeah, he throws fireball. Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah.
Not the same.
Little bit. I mean, honestly, now that I think about it, I'd probably have the same voice actor if I could.
It would work.
It would work. Let's see. And the last one we had was K9.
That's right.
Yeah. So her quirk is Dog Whisperer. And she and Shroud were so Shroud was in the class beneath K9.
Okay.
They went to the same school. That's how Shroud came into the agency. And like I just like having all these little details that like I'm not gonna have an opportunity to put in the story, but like I can record them here and it's fun to know. Like I know. The funniest thing to me about her is that she's a cat person.
Yeah.
Her quirk is that she can talk to and to some degree control dogs, but she actually loves cats. Oh man, and that's maybe half of all the quirks and characters that we came up with for that agency.
But no, that was fun. In this chapter, I think, like I said, I really enjoyed the dynamic just coming into the new work environment and meeting everybody.
Yeah.
And just kind of, there's some awkward, uncomfortable moments, but then there's some
that's
really
any
fun
workplace.
Yeah, exactly. There's some fun moments. We're just kind of getting used to everybody. And then we have a little while where we get to kind of peek in on what Kurai and Eri are doing,
like how their dynamic is. Because like we've had them like going up against like these world-class villains so many times now that I was just like, I kind of want to see what happens if they go up against like Rent-A-Thugs.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's just
and it's funny is what happens.
Yeah, they're just chilling. It's great.
Yeah, like both before and after Kurai's like, nah, she's like, why don't we do this? No, this, and like, even though she grew up in the apocalypse, so here's where absurd. Some people are gonna be like, wait, shouldn't she be giving him tips? She is giving him on tips, just not necessarily on fighting, because there is so Eri has trained her quirk. She's definitely trained in combat, but she has not trained a combat quirk for very long. So think about it for a minute. It's like she trained Rewind. Rewind in and of itself is not really a combat quirk. It can be, there are combat applications, but the quirk in and of itself doesn't really lend itself to fighting, right? She would have had to learn how to defend herself, growing up the way that she did. But the way that she could blend her quirk with that would be fairly limited. Now she's got One for All, like one of the ultimate combat quirks, and so now she's got to learn from Kurai. It's like, okay, these like kind of how Deku was at the beginning, though to a lesser degree. Like he's got to run it through. It's like, okay, it's like, okay, these two separate things exist, yes, but we need to focus on how do we bring them together and make them work.
Yes.
So there's like those little bits where she's like, well, we're fast enough to get away from bullets. Like, why does that bother us? And he's like, well, tell that to the people who have been shot before. Tell that to the top heroes who have been shot before. And even after that, he's like, by the way, I saw you do this with this guy's arm. If you're gonna do that, here's how to do it better. Like,
which is, I mean, that's the kind of shop talk that's gonna be happening when you're doing this job. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and like, I'm enjoying getting to explore this dynamic of theirs finally, because, like, again, for so long it's been like her, like him more than any of them. Like she she followed the idea of him.
Yes.
For a very long time. And that's not to say that's not to say that like he was a bad idea to follow per se. But like now she like, and it kind of started like during the arc where Kurt-Eye was in the hospital. You know, she talked to Mina. She wanted to know more about Kurt-Eye, like the myth behind the legend, or like the man behind the myth. Sorry. And now she's like getting to spend time and just talk to him like he's her classmate.
Just be his peer.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like that's gotta be very surreal for her, and you kind of see it in the way that she talks to him, because like obviously like there's a very deep respect there for her. Like she doesn't like she asks questions, but she doesn't really rebuke him or like talk back to him. Like anytime she asks him something, even when he tells her something that she kind of thinks like this doesn't make sense, she's very respectful about it. But that aside, they are moving closer toward being equivalent.
Yes.
In a sense, like everybody's been looking to her for answers about the future. She's been looking for them to answers about what to do now, and they're kind of learning how to meet in the middle at this point, which is kind of fun. But now we've got a giant mudslide thing happening.
Yes. So we get this emergency call, and both sets of characters that we've discussed get called in. Now we're going to see the tension rise with the Iida agency, though, because the nepotism is showing.
The nepotism is showing. Although, to Ingenium's credit, though, he knows his brother. He knows his brother. B, his brother has a track record concerning this kind of situation exactly.
I mean, he organized everything on Nabu Island, and the civilians they came out.
They came out fine. Nobody none of the civilians were hurt. Nobody was Kurt-Eye was killed, but that wasn't on him. There wasn't anything he could have done about that.
Those leadership skills.
And Ingenium's he knows that they're in there, and knowing his brother, he's like, all right, we need to make sure that those stay sharp. We need to make sure that they don't just have a chance to fade into the background. So he's trying to give him the opportunity to be like, okay. He's like, you've shown that you can do this before. We need you to do it again. Let's go. And that's part of what being a good manager is about. Is you gotta you need to know your employees' strengths and weaknesses, and you need to give them You need to give your one of the things that a really good boss will do is they will give their employee an opportunity to conquer their weakness by playing on their strengths, and that's what Ingenium's trying to do here. Honestly, the fact that Iida is his brother has very little to do with, from the outside, there's definitely nepotism at play here. Maybe you could say, for my part, in writing this, nepotism has very little to do with it on Ingenium's part. He believes that his brother is the one who's going to be the best to get them through this situation. Now, whether or not that will come to play out, we'll have to wait and see. Because Ingenium's not above making mistakes. He got himself almost killed by Stain because he went at him without waiting for his sidekicks to get there.
Yeah. The other thing is we're all, Iida was not expecting this level of responsibility this early on.
Yeah.
So he's panicking a little bit inside. I can tell.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
There was one thing that I wanted to kind of remark on that was kind of for all that they've been through, Mina and Iida, there are still some things that show their inexperience, right? So as soon as Ingenium runs up and tells them, hey, get your gear on, we've got a landslide emergency, we all need to be heading out. The two of them are like, all right, let's go. But what does the other guy do? Do you remember? He stays behind, and he asks, one of the first things he asks Ingenium, he's like, how many people are going? He's already thinking ahead with the big picture. He's like, how many people are... He's like, okay. He understands the situation. Obviously he's going to go and get his uniform on. But he's like, I need to know what kind of information... he wants to work with as much information as he has available to him. So that's kind of one of the... I kind of wanted to show he may not come from UA or what have you, but...
He has the experience.
He has the experience
to strategize.
He's had a full year of... He's had a full year of work hero experience before this. And this is his second year doing it. So, he's got that experience from last time. He knows which questions to ask. He knows what information he needs to have before he goes into an operation like this. Mina and Iida can do their jobs well, but they gotta like I just wanted to have like a little bit of like, okay, your inexperience is showing a little bit here. So I don't know, just little things like that where it's like, yes, they've come so far, they still have further to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna be doing a natural disaster arc here. There's not gonna be any villains to speak of that had anything to do with all of this. Most of My Hero Academia centers around villains and everything. Like, I honestly don't know that they've dealt with a real natural disaster in the show.
Aside from like training accidents.
Yeah, like in training, that's it. But like, we haven't actually seen them. We haven't actually had them had a chance to put that practice in particular to use.
Yeah.
So we want. So I was like, you know what? Let's put them in a situation where they actually have to like let's do a rescue arc. Let's do like a natural disaster rescue arc where it's like there's no villain, there's no great fight to be had. It's like our goal is to save as many people as possible.
Yep.
So that's what this next arc's going to be about, or at least this segment of the arc. Like, so far my original arcs have been pretty hit or miss. I want to say, like, people really enjoyed it when I did the Gang Orca internship early on. People really enjoyed that arc. I think people really enjoyed the Future Past arc.
Yes, they did.
There was some nitpicking about the hospital arc. But I think I'm like this one. I feel like how do I put it? Like, I don't know that this one's gonna be like anybody saying like, oh yeah, this is the greatest arc this is the greatest arc that he came up with. I don't think that's gonna be said about this, but I do think it's a good, worthy addition to the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I see it is we got to watch the music festival is like, this is what life would normally be like.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily like 100% necessary to the plot, but it was important because we got that time to just get a window into like, this is typically what the hero life would look like.
Or at least the student hero life would look like.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that this plays a similar role.
Okay. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Well, as I said before, thank you so much for sticking with us for 4 years. I don't think we're gonna go for another 4 years.
No, it should be. We're getting close.
We're well past the halfway point in the story. But I do look forward to seeing what you guys have to say about this and the incoming story that follows. Don't worry about Umbra. He'll be around. He'll be around. Akaruri Ex Machina has met his foil. That's too good for me to just be like, okay, bye now. No, he'll be hiding for a bit, but he'll be back. He'll be back. But yeah, just again, guys, thank you so much for the last few years of support, and I look forward to however many more podcasts you guys are around for. So, all right. We'll see you guys in a couple of days with the next Pokemon Warpath podcast. Have a Plus Ultra a couple of days until then.
Bye.